I mean, I get it, but I that tells me a lot about the different mentalities of players because some players, like Max, for instance, I was like, look this over to let me know if there's any edits. He didn't even watch it. He's like, just post it. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he has that mentality. He has that, like, Marcy's like that. Marcy's like, I don't care what people think. Whereas some players are like, can you take that down? I don't want to like upset. And then you can see like where they go. Like, okay, this kid's a Power Five kid
Hmm.
because of the mentality, right? Were you the first? Speaking of like Power Five, and I was thinking about this morning.
Yeah.
Were you the first player from Western New York to go to Big Ten? You had to have been. You and Riley, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Like I don't think there's any boys that went Power Five or to the Big Ten.
No, I think during my soccer career and getting recruited was like the start of a lot of Western New York soccer programs.
Because it was like
Because it
you,
was just Buffalo Soccer
Pizzino,
Academy, and it
right?
was taking the best kids in Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, and we had one team.
And
One
you had
team
one team,
that was winning games, going to tournaments, getting more respect, recognition, and that kind of then created a lot of soccer in the area.
and then that was you and Marcy, and was Pizzino on that team?
She was towards like maybe her junior or senior year,
Yeah.
towards the later years, but she was with a lot of the girls before Buffalo Soccer Academy at Empire.
Okay, Empire.
I wasn't with Empire or anything until, like, I didn't start Buffalo Soccer Academy until 8th grade,
Where did you play before?
Amherst.
You played Amherst until eighth
Travel.
grade.
Yeah, until about end of 7th grade, yeah.
Wow, like you can't.
That's
That
because my
do-
parents and I, we didn't know anything.
Nobody knew.
We
and
didn't
it-
know
yeah.
until like a couple people saw me play modified soccer in 7th grade and was like, you need to be on a team that's competitive and elite because you have potential to go somewhere.
How long was BSA around before?
Before we joined?
Yeah, before you
I
joined.
don't really know all the history with it. Maybe a year or two before we became a team. But like I had a coach at Amherst Soccer, Coach Brian, and when I was probably in, I don't know, 5th, 6th grade maybe, and he was like, she's got potential, but my parents were like, oh, okay, like, thanks. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's so different now because now you got that juggernaut Flash
Yeah.
that we're almost every player that we work with is a Flash player. I mean, we got the RNYs, we get the, smaller community club kids, but for the most part, it's all Flash.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it, the percentage of ECNL players going into college is like 80%. That's where we're at right now. That's insane. To be like that many players going in, I'm talking nationwide. I'm not even talking about Flash. Flash is more probably like 95%, at least on their ECNL teams. And that's just crazy. So what was your recruiting process like? Because we've talked about this all the time with a lot of parents, like highlight reel, official visits, ID camps. Like, what was your process? Because you were committed to BU first, right?
Yes.
And then you decommitted to Ohio State. One, talk about that process, and just like how did BU find you?
Yeah, I think it's so hard. You can't really compare what my experience was compared to now because
Yeah.
highlight reels weren't really a thing. You didn't have game footage of every single game like you do now. There's just so many more resources available now.
Mm-hmm.
So back then it was like I had no idea what I was doing. My parents had no idea. We had nothing to go off of necessarily because it was all very new.
Yeah.
But it was just going to showcases and just doing my best and working hard, taking coaching points, and luckily I had a really great coach, Coach Henrik,
Yep.
and he knew soccer, he knew connections with coaches, and he just had us go out and play, and coaches started to come and wanted to know who BSA was, like who is this one random team from Buffalo winning games, like who are they?
Yeah.
And they came to watch, and then just communication started to happen with coaches, and at the time that process was all able to happen in 8th grade, freshman year, versus now they have a rule on junior year. So it's so
Right.
hard to compare back then versus now because there was no waiting period.
Did you? How old were you when you committed to BU?
It was probably beginning of my freshman year, so maybe 15.
So what changed? What changed when you realized, okay, Ohio State?
Well, at the
Like, how did
time,
that whole
I was,
thing
well, at the time, I didn't know anything with college recruitment, what was out there, and at the time, I only had a couple weeks to decide
Yeah.
with my offer, and it was kind of like, okay, do you take it because it's amazing and you want to, like, that's your option and you do it?
Yeah.
Or do you turn it down and then wait what will happen? So being 15 years old, I obviously was like, well, I can't turn this down. It's
Exactly.
incredible. And I was fortunate to have the offer that I did, but I just wasn't happy in the end because my personality was more Big Ten, spirited school, and I always factored in if soccer wasn't a thing, would I still love the school? Would I still love the people, the environment, the city? And I think without soccer, I love the Big Ten school. Like my brothers, one went to Penn State, one went to Pittsburgh, and I loved Penn State
Okay.
because of the football team, the spirit.
Yeah.
So you take away soccer, and I don't know if I would have loved BU as much, and that's kind of why I created hesitation and started to kind of just, I guess, voice that I wasn't really super happy with my decision, not because of it was BU, just because I knew that didn't fit my personality.
Right.
And then more coaches started to watch me, and I grew as a player, and then things kind of trickled into place.
How did they take it? When you told BU, how did they take it?
I called on like a Sunday at night, so any phone call on Sunday night isn't usually
Gotta
a
be
good thing.
Yeah.
So I think she was a little bit hesitant when she saw me calling.
Because that was
but-
Nancy, right? Nancy
Yeah.
felt, yeah.
I mean, obviously she was probably disappointed and a little bit frustrated, but I think at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for yourself, and she probably understood that I'm making a decision because it's what was going to be best for me.
We have a player that committed somewhere, and she told another coach that, hey, by the way, I'm committing here. And if a player does that, I think that's a good thing. Players should tell coaches that are interested in them, hey, I'm choosing another school. Well, this coach was like, you're a terrible person, and like, I cannot believe you. You have no morals. You have no ethics. And the girl's just like, well, I made the right choice.
Yeah, and it's tough because when you do verbally commit somewhere, that's creating trust between you and the coach that, okay, like I'm in it, I'm going
Right.
to do it. And I think that's a little bit different now because you only have 2 years. So if a coach is committing to you, they've obviously have probably watched you for a few years. They're all in on you.
Right.
So I think it is tough, but at the end of the day, how they react to certain situations probably also does show character. And if that's how they handle getting emotional and letting the emotions take the best, so that kind of shows that when other obstacles or challenges come along, it's probably going to handle it an emotional way as well.
What was your mentality? Like, that's insane because you committed as a freshman. How do you stay motivated? How do you, like, guard against that? Because we're having juniors starting to commit. And how do you, like, avoid that lull of, like, that weight off your shoulders and make sure that you still, like...
Yeah, as a player, you don't ever want to plateau. Like, you don't want to ever hit your climax in high school and freshman year in college. Like, you don't want to ever hit that.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is just kind of knowing that nothing is going to be given to you. You're not going to earn, and like you're going to only, nothing is going to be given to you. You're only going to be able to earn everything.
Right.
And that's kind of the mentality. Like, I expected nothing and I earned everything.
Right. Because you weren't a walk-on at Ohio State. No, you were a scholarship player. Were you redshirted your freshman year? No. You played right away, and you were up top as a freshman.
Yep.
How long were you a forward before you switched to outside back?
Till my senior year. Once COVID hit,
Yeah.
we had a lot of people out because of COVID or contact tracing, and they needed an outside back for our game.
So
and
that spring, that COVID spring
Yes.
season?
Yep.
Okay.
So they needed someone, and they trusted me to go back there, and I did really well. And so ever since then, they kept me back there. So I played 2.5 basically.
Yeah.
If you count the COVID season.
Because
and
you
a
got the
half,
COVID
yeah.
year.
2 years actually, as an outside back.
So your career was technically 5 years.
Yes.
5 years because you got the COVID year. And so you're the same time frame as Marcy.
Yes.
Because you had one more full season. No, two. You had 2 full seasons after the COVID year. One.
It was the spring.
And then the fall. And then you were done.
Yes.
And then you're done. Got it. And then you went straight to Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And you were working at Dick's corporate?
Yes.
They're like headquarters?
Yes.
Their headquarters are in Pittsburgh? I didn't know it was like founded in Pittsburgh, or was it?
Yeah. Well, their first actual Dick's Sporting Goods shop was in Binghamton, New York.
Oh, okay.
But their corporate office has always been in Pittsburgh.
Okay. I just saw that, like, at one of the Dick's, you know, like, when you go to the bathrooms, and then they have, like, a mural of, like, the very first one. I was thinking about doing something like that in here, of, like, Sports Performance Park, and just, like, putting a picture there.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, this is where I started. You know, so before I started at SPP,
Yep.
I was one of the trainers that would just find parks. This morning, I found a video of Ella Rudney from 2015, July 8th, 2015, and I almost started crying because I'm like, it was at UB, and I'm like, oh my God, and now she's at Nebraska, and I'm like, holy crap, this has like come a long way, and now I have like you coaching with me and Carissa, but now, so you didn't like the corporate
No,
thing?
I couldn't sit still. Like,
Yeah,
everything with soccer was regiment, it was moving, it was different day, different tasks to complete, and at corporate, I just didn't love the idea of 9 to 5 every single day.
Same desk.
You come in, you clock out, and you leave, and that drove me crazy. I couldn't do it.
And then when you were in Pittsburgh, you were with the Riverhounds.
Yes.
You were just assisting a couple ECNL teams, or what?
Yeah, a couple teams, all different age groups.
Yeah.
Wherever they needed help, and that I realized after working in corporate all day and then coaching at night, the best part of my day was coaching.
Absolutely.
And that's where I kind of started to question, okay, what do I want to do? Because the best part of my day and what I look forward to most is working with young soccer players.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you moved home. But your boyfriend was here, and your family's here. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of an easy decision.
Easy decision where the sense was like, what was I going to do now?
Right.
And I really started to contemplate what I wanted to do back in like November, December. And I honestly started to network with tons of people back in Buffalo. People I knew, people I didn't know on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because I wanted there to be something that was, when I came back, okay, like I have
this set up,
a foundation, something to do.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to connect with you.
Yep.
Started to connect with Coach Peter at Niagara.
Yep.
Started to connect with the Flash, started to connect with anyone that would honestly listen and offer their advice or their help. I was just really open to advice.
Yeah. And it's worked out so far. I mean, you started here in April.
Yep. And I moved back in April.
Yep.
Or like end of May.
Yep, that's right. And then, like, your schedule's crazy. Like, you remind me so much of me, like, when I was your age, because, like, I was thinking, at your age, I was doing like 3 teams at a club, and then I was doing the goalkeeper training at a club. Then I was doing goalkeeper training at another club, and I was coaching, depending on the year, it was either high school soccer or it was at University of Detroit College, goalkeeping coaching and whatnot. And when I see you and I know that, like, okay, from here, you have training in here, and then you go to Flash Fields or wherever you guys are training, or you just got here from Niagara. And it's like, I remember those days. Like,
yeah, I always have a bag of clothes in the car and
your
a
big lunch pail.
because I'm packing for breakfast, lunch,
You
dinner,
look like
and
a
snacks.
construction worker.
Yeah,
with
I
that
know.
thing. Like, you're just walking around. It's so funny.
But it's like right now I'm trying to do as many different things to get experience and opportunities, and then hopefully in a year or two something sticks, and now I can go from 5 things to 2 things.
Absolutely. And you're developing self-awareness too, because you're going to be coaching at the club level with teams where you get to see that year-long growth. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most fun things. It's like, okay, where were we in August? What do we look like in July? That was like the best part. So you get that, but then you're also working with college and collegiate student athletes. So you get the full spectrum of recruiting, and do you really want to be an assistant long term, stuff like that. Then you get in here, and you don't, like, most of the time it's the same players each week, but sometimes it's an influx of new players. But you could be working with the very best player in an age group, and in your next hour you could be working with the same age player, but you could be working with a player that needs the most work in Western New York. And that's, you see this, you're working with literally the wide range of players. Your youngest player is like 7 right now, and then your oldest player is what, 24? 23, whatever in Niagara is. So, any idea of where you're leaning, of like you like the club or you like the college? Are you involved in like recruiting yet?
Starting to learn a little bit more with it.
And he's like big in like Canadians, right?
Yeah, just because of the location, we get a lot of Canadian interest.
Right. And some of the best players over the years have been Canadians, right? Are you going to go on any like recruiting trips? Have you talked to him about that after the season?
Yes, yeah. Coach Kenra, the assistant, and I probably will go on a couple of recruiting trips together.
So what are your recruiting trips going to be most likely? ECNL showcases?
Yeah, or
GA
some of
showcases?
there's Canadian even.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really all, it depends on like what the head coach wants and where he wants to see players come from.
And the budget, right?
Budget, too.
Because obviously your budget is way different than Ohio State's.
Yes.
How did Ohio State find you?
They came and watched me play at a showcase.
Specifically? Like, did they
They had Riley Bowers
what are
and
the
Maddie Lowe
rules?
were already committed.
Oh, and they...
So there's a little bit of contact between all of us.
And they
but
saw
then they also
you, and
saw
they're
me
like,
play.
who's that girl? Awesome. I didn't realize that. But are they allowed to contact you? Did they break rules?
No, because
You decommitted, and then you committed, right?
yes.
So then that's fine.
I mean, coaches are always able to show interest to your club coach, like regardless.
Oh, okay. Did they talk to Henrik and be like, hey, and then Henrik came to you?
No, it was a very like respectful process, but I think it was just out there that I wanted something a little bit different than just be you.
Yeah. Did you know Brittany at all? Because
I
Brittany
didn't-
played there.
Right. I didn't know her beforehand, but when I committed, a couple people were like, "Oh, you should go talk to her about her
Yeah.
experience."
Yeah, she loved it. Right? And she's still really close with Nancy. I know Nancy through the coaching courses and NSCAA. She was a staff member of a couple of my courses and whatnot. But so do you know where you're headed? Do you know like what you like the most?
Oh, I do know that I like having an impact on young athletes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And a lot of my skill set is being able to communicate with athletes of all different ages,
Yep.
emotional capacity, everything. And also just building character and leadership qualities. A lot of what I do at Niagara, yes, it's soccer, it's coaching, but a lot of it is culture and leadership based. And having meetings with individual players as a team and just working on their leadership, their culture, the way they speak to each other. And that's because we did a lot of that at Ohio State. And aside from soccer and success there, that was probably my biggest takeaway and the thing I'm most thankful for is just the leadership qualities I've learned and being competent as a leader.
How do you teach leadership?
It's tough because
I don't know if it can be taught.
I think it can. Oh, I definitely
be
think it can.
nurtured.
Nurtured. Because how I was my freshman year versus how I was my senior 5th year, I was like, wow, if only I knew so many things my freshman year. But part of the process is just trusting
And learning.
and learning and just growing.
And we talk about it all the time. You get annoyed when a player is complaining about like playing time or complaining about the coach and stuff like that. Like, so talk about like your freshman year. Like, if you weren't getting the playing time that you thought you deserved or didn't play the position or whatever, were you frustrated or anything like that? Like, well, what's the difference between your freshman year and your senior year?
Yeah, well, when you come as for any freshman, you go in with you're the big cheese in Western New York and your high school team, and then all of a sudden you're in a pool of players that are the exact same, if not better than you.
Yep.
And I mean, it's two different players. There's players that want to grow and just put their head down and work, and that was the kind of player that I was. and there's players that rather be right than learn. And you see a lot of both players that rather be right and expect things are the ones that have a little bit more difficulty to adapting to the culture, the environment, and growing as a player and a person. The ones that just put their head down and work, know that their time's going to come. They're trusting the process. Things will happen if it's supposed to happen, and it usually does for those type of players. Not saying that players can be both at some point, like
Yeah.
it all depends.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is just being able to learn and grow, and that's going to help your development.
How, like, when you stepped onto Ohio State, like, what was so you were 18 as a freshman?
Yes.
How old was the oldest player?
Oh, we had like a 6th year, so maybe like 25, 24.
So it's insane to think that you're just going to step onto the field for any of our players, to think that you're just going to step on the field and contribute. It's like,
That, I mean, skill-wise, yes, but also maturity-wise. Like, you can't be, when you go to a big-time school, you can't be a goofy 18-year-old when you come to practice. Like, you're there to train, you're there to
Yeah.
work, and then you can have your fun with your friends and classes and all that afterwards. But
Right.
a 25-year-old isn't going to put up, 25, 24, even 21 and up, isn't going to put up with 18-year-old goofiness.
Nonsense.
Like,
Yeah.
so that's, I think, and also a huge factor for a lot of kids going to choosing their colleges. Like, what's the experience do you want? And going to Ohio State, like, it's you're working. You are working all times. Everything you
time
do affects the
difference.
team.
Absolutely. Like, I was watching, what's the show? Hard Knocks. Hard Knocks, and it was the Jets this year, and it was Robert Saleh. And he's talking about what type of competitor are you, right? And I posted it on Instagram and whatnot, but you just nailed that. Like, I forget the one. It's like commander and competitor and survivor. And one of them is like you do the bare minimum and you want everything handed to you, you know. And then there's one where you're basically I just lost my train of thought. That you rely and you're only happy when you're getting the playing time. You only put in the work when you're getting the playing time. You only put in the work when you're playing the position that you want, and you want the fame and you want the glory, right? But you're not willing to like work all the time. And then like the commanders is you work every single day regardless of outcome. You're just the hardest worker, and then you bring people with you. And I mean, if you look at your Niagara team, I bet you could pick out every single player, be like, well, she's a survivor. She just does it when everything is really nice. And then that player is a leader and can bring people with them and work regardless, never complains. And it's because I get so many messages and so many texts about, well, I'm playing center back. It's like, dude, you're on the field. You're one of 11. You're on the field, be happy. Oh, I can't believe, he's playing her at center mid. It's like, that means that they trust you, right?
And that's why at Niagara, I am able to connect so well with all of the girls because I was a freshman. I was a sophomore. I had a position change. I was injured. I was a captain. I was every scenario possible. Like, I understand what each of those players are going through because at some point I was that player.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that I try not to forget is, okay, like freshmen, like they have to grow. They have to develop. That's why you can't automatically assume something about them because they don't know any better. As sophomores, okay, now you have a little bit more accountability, a little bit more ownership, and juniors, and you keep growing. Mm-hmm. And then by the time you're 5th year, senior, or junior, like you have influence and accountability that decision-making becomes a little bit easier too.
You said like you walked in like, oh, Western New York, like I really feel that when I first got here and I saw some of the high-level players, I'm like, you know what? Players are pretty good, but they're not nationally special. They're regionally special. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. We're getting to the point where there's more national special players, but we're still not even like close. What are you seeing in terms of your days of playing when it was you and Marcy and Pizzino? versus today's? Like, do you think that the level, like, where are we trending? In your own personal opinion, your own eyes, where are we trending?